Cool. What's up, guys? So I am here with Tyler, who is kind of into AI and machine learning, got a PhD in biostats, I believe.
Yeah.
What's up, Tyler? Welcome to the channel. Give us a little bit of a background of kind of what you've been up to, and yeah, be cool to hear it from you.
Yeah, I got you. So pretty much quick rundown on myself, just as what I've been doing lately. Kind of started, was on kind of like on Twitter for a while, posted, started recently, decided to come back to post some of the AI shit I've been building just because I just see all these people posting on Twitter and I'm like, damn, my shit is like way better than half these motherfuckers. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna start posting again. But pretty much what I've been working on, I pretty much consult, do a lot of AI consulting with a lot of AI, kind of like different than what you kind of see on like Twitter with like I don't really do n8n automations and things like that. Just work primarily with like startups or like even some enterprises with like tech teams and helping them just implement AI into their business or maybe further improve their products. Again, using AI, machine learning, just honestly sometimes just pure code, just like being a pure dev sometimes when need be. But yeah, that's just a quick and dirty on myself. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because I've seen your YouTube videos, Tyler, and we follow each other on X, and the stuff that you've been putting out is yeah a bit different to what I see all the time, and obviously different to what I share as well. And that's really why I wanted to have this conversation because you touch on a lot of things that I think people getting into n8n don't really think too much about.
Mhm. That's
It's
the whole point of all my shit. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Because it's easy to just you see a workflow, you download it, you jump into building it, but you don't actually understand like is this the best way of doing it, and
hmm
how do you troubleshoot and fix all the issues? Because that's what people are going to inevitably run into when they start trying to pull their own APIs and HTTP requests and all that stuff. So yeah, it'd be cool to hear from you. How do you think about systems and kind of putting the pieces together before you even like jump into, different tools?
Yeah. And how I like to think about systems and just putting all this shit together is I like to always just think back, like forget code, forget AI, forget any of these tools. Just think back, just think down granularly, like purely to like what's the business problem we're solving, actually. Because a lot of times what like for one of my clients that I work with a lot, it's like honestly just talking to the stakeholders. They don't know shit about tech, they don't know shit about AI. Just fucking talking to them about what do you need to automate? Okay, you want this process done? Like let's say like extracting certain clauses from contracts. Like what does that look like? Like what do you do? Like what if you were to make me do this manually and I'm a complete idiot, like a complete fucking idiot, what would you have me do step by step? Like I'm a dumbass. Show me step by step what to do. Okay? And I follow those steps. And then you kind of start reverse engineering. How do you then do this through code? Does this need an LLM? Is there a decision making process in between? And a good example is I'm trying to think of a good example. Maybe contracts isn't the best one for this, but like maybe I guess more like Twitter related is like let's say it's simple and cold email replying, right? Inbox management with cold emails. Okay, so big pain in the ass in running cold email campaigns is responding to the emails, right? So there's going to be you're getting like people telling you to fuck off, so which you can ignore. People saying not interested. People, they're kind of interested, but they're asking for more info. Let's say like, oh, like that sounds kind of cool, but like, what do you guys do? Like, how can you guys help? They ask like, they have some objection, like, what do you guys charge? Or maybe they're interested and they just want to book a call, right? Uh, so that's one pain in the ass process. But what does that look like if you really reverse engineer it step from like a step by step process? Well, you get the email. Okay. So that's one step. You have to pull the actual email coming in. So you can use whatever software you're using, let's say Smart Lead, whatever the fuck, right? But you're pulling in the email. That's step one. Reading it. Okay. If you've ever anyone's ever ran a cold email campaign. So I used to run a lot of cold email stuff back in the day. It's identifying what type of email response is this. Again, is it someone tell me to fuck off so I can remove them off the list? Someone that's just not interested. Maybe the timing isn't right. They're interested. Let's book a call. They have a pricing objection. They have some other type of objection. Things like that. What you're really doing is you're bucketing everything.
Hmm.
Like subconsciously, mentally, you're bucketing everything. So all that really is, if you go down to code to reverse engineer that, it's a classification problem. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just like okay, here's this message. Here's the email I sent. Here's this message. how what bucket does this fall in, or is this other, right? Like, okay, that's step one. And then from there on, you just have to generate a reply. And a lot of times too, like I know a lot of like because I've just a lot of cold email friends that run like lead gen agencies, like you don't even need an AI generated reply. If you can classify everything correctly, you can already have a preset reply
Mm.
based off the category. And like to us, the AI stuff isn't even like that sexy, but that's sometimes not sexy is actually what's most consistent in this situation because again, like you don't sometimes you don't even need a fully generated AI response. It's like if you already know the person's interested and they want to book a call, the email's like 99% of the time the same, unless they have a
Yeah.
interested, but they have a follow-up question, which is fine. And we can account for that in like some classification or like with the AI stuff. But like most of the time it's okay, cool, sounds good. Are you free this day and this day? And obviously you can pull that through using some like just pulling in data. Again, that's not even AI related. That's just like plugging in merge fields at the end of the day. So my main thing is like reverse engineering what's the actual process being done from like almost like a brain, like what are you doing in your head to do said step process step by step, and also trying to make things as failure proof as possible. Because, and maybe that's just because the type of clients I've worked with, it's very like I've worked with a lot of like legal teams where like the room for margin for error is like fucking, they do not want hallucinations. It's like has like deeper or like a health related company. Like I used to work as an employee as like a health related company. When you're providing like health recommendations, you cannot have an LM hallucinate and go based off their own GPT's knowledge base, let's say. That's like providing health recommendations off. Like you can't just say, here's a health as a company, a health company, you can't provide a recommendation on health and like your health, let's say, because that's what ChatGPT said. It has to be from your own knowledge base, cited, and things like that. So it's like I think just because the type of companies I've worked for and the clients I've worked with, it's like kind of instilled that mindset inside of me. I think that's why when you see like my tweets and just how I go about system designs, like how do you prevent hallucinations? How do you have what guardrails should you set here and here and here? Like where is the room for error potentially there? And like kind of like the cold email example, the room for error is in the classification. Like yes, the classification may be wrong, but what if there's two an email reply falls into two categories? How do you deal with that? Things like that. It's like just understand what can go wrong and mitigating those issues before they even happen, and at least having something in place where maybe you don't fix it with AI, but at least you have a human come in and just type it yourself, which is fine. Then fucking up the email reply, and then you burn a lead or you burn your company's reputation. I don't know, but yeah, I kind of just wanted to riff right there. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's good stuff because, like what you mentioned there, in terms of just, I guess, playing stupid and be like, okay, just explain this process to me like a 5 year old. And if there's
yeah.
nobody there to explain it to you, then it's like you can do that yourself, right? And break it
Mhm.
down. If you're working with clients, obviously that's the best way to go. Of have that conversation and and try and figure out what's going on in every step of the process. Is there other people involved? What data gets passed? What decisions need to get made? Is there any creativity involved? What kind of
Mhm.
knowledge are you relying on? Are you drawing from different records and things like this? It'd be cool to dive a bit deeper into, like you mentioned, error handling and reducing the margin for error. And
Mhm.
I think I think that's a pretty important topic. Um, what are some of the things that you do with your clients to kind of mitigate that? Because I know that you've spoken before about AI agents versus a more linear, like
Yeah.
approach, and I'm I'm definitely a big fan of the more linear approach. Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same.
could
So
you kind of jump into that?
yeah, because technically, even though I'm faulty of this, because I just understand how the market, how Twitter perceives what agents are and what agents aren't actually in real life. Because I view agents as like, if you think of cursor, where it could literally think on, you give it a prompt, what you need to do, and it thinks of the exact workflow for you on to do said step, and it implements it. That's what I actually think of an agent. Kind of Twitter, they view agent as like a workflow, which is fine. Like to us, I call it I call my own workflows agents now, just because it's just trying to match the Twitter language. We're like, hey, I don't give a fuck. But I'll say most people aren't trying to don't need like a cursor AI. Like they don't need a full autonomous agent to pick the workflow. Kind of what I was saying, like most of the shit you need automated, there is a step-by-step process to go. You do this, and that. You have to decide between this and that to get to here. And then if it's this, you do this. Like it's most of the things you need done is a step-by-step workflow, like that you need automated. So the whole point is if you can reduce variance, right? Because if you go on Cursor AI and you have it build you like a complex, not even like a semi-complicated project, like, hey, I build me an AI system to categorize cold email campaigns, right? And that's all you say, you'll get like you got do it, do it 5 different times on 5 brand new like repos.
Hmm.
You get 5 different variations, I'm sure, on how to best do it, right? There is a lot of variance that comes with autonomous agents, which if you want to allow for that, then by all means. But if you're trying to have consistent results, say like with a cold email categorization or customer support, right? Help working with customer support, and you want something consistent, then you do need a linear workflow, something more static, more linear, because that's going to be what's going to get you consistent results time and time again. If you want a system where when you get this customer complaint, it routes it to this support message that does this refund. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing.
Yeah,
Like, and you
yeah,
want to do that time and time again, you have to create the static workflow for it to do it time and time again. If you allow the AI to pick it, you're leaving room for it to just fucking like pick whatever type of thing. And kind of what the example with Cursor is like, if you tell it to build you a customer server, a support agent for your company, and give it the same exact description, it'll build you like 5 different variations. And if you have to be able to live with that, if you're letting it pick and decide with shit like that. So it's kind of like that, and then like in terms of like error handling, I like to always just log where like errors happen. Like this is part of the game. Sometimes like you don't catch every guardrail type of thing. Like kind of like with the cold email example. Like I've actually built one of those before where to categorize cold email campaigns, and I actually didn't realize like at the time when we like first deployed, like hey, like someone could get into 2 buckets. Like they could be interested in booking a call, but they could also ask at the same time, what's the price? Right? Like that, like you just kind of don't think of it at the time, but like once you deploy, like, oh shit, like that's so fucking obvious. So it's just having like certainty based, almost like precautionary measures type of thing. So like a lot of times when I build a chatbot, again, it depends on the situation. But when I build like a chatbot, let's say I have it like an extra call before it gets pushed out as an output for like, hey, is this actually based off the context? And I remember someone commented like that's a shit ton of API calls, which it is. I'm not even denying the fact that it isn't. And it may be overkill. But like for this specific situation, we just didn't have the room for error that we wanted. We didn't want hallucinations to occur. So it's like you got to give and take. It's like
yeah.
if you go if you're like I don't know the exact formula for it, but it's like the classic bias or bias variance trade-off in like machine learning. If you get anyone, probably no one knows about it, but yeah, it's like the classic like bias variance trade-off type of thing. But yeah.
Could you kind of unpack that a little bit more? You said you had using multiple APIs and things. What did that process look like specifically?
When you say unpack what, like what are you referring to exactly?
You were mentioning about making sure that the context is getting passed correctly.
Oh yeah, yeah. So not the context getting passed correctly. More so is the context. Say you're building like a traditional RAG setup where you're pulling in chunks of data from a knowledge base or your SOPs, whatever it may be, right? To answer a user's question. So if you under the hood of how RAG or any chatbot works is a person asks a question, let's just say, let's say it's an internal chatbot for a customer or an internal chatbot to help onboard new members to learn about the company, let's say,
Yeah,
right? It's obviously going to have as a knowledge base like your your company FAQs, your SOPs, shit like that. Usually, what happens under the hood is an employee asks a question like, let's say, yeah, how long does onboarding usually take for our clients, right? GPT will like pretty much we don't need to get into embeddings and shit, but essentially through some AI, machine learning, natural language processing stuff, it'll get that question. So, how long does onboarding take for our clients? It will find similar chunks of text from your knowledge base. So
yeah.
hopefully it finds a chunk of data that talks about how long onboarding takes, right? But what if in your docs that does nothing about how long onboarding takes?
Hmm.
What if that, which is possible, which is a very, you can't cover everything in an SOP. You don't really think about, sometimes you don't think about that. Whoever's writing the SOPs initially, they're not writing this SOP, this doc for a chatbot. They're just writing it just to have it written down a lot of times.
Yeah.
So what if that's not in the actual documents? And then it pulls stuff related to onboarding, but it has it's like here's a step-by-step process with onboarding, but nothing is mentioned about how long it takes. And what if the model hallucinates and says, and you don't write your prompt well either, and you don't write the prompt well where it's like, hey, if there's no information to answer it, just say like I don't know or some shit like that. But let's say it spews out some random answer. Do you really want to send that, have it automatically respond with that, right? Or do you want it to flag it and you don't even know if you don't have a check to say like, hey, here's this query, here's the context provided. Is this context helpful in answering the question directly? Yes or no? And that's how you silently, like quietly break
Right.
because you don't even like this is not happening. This is happening. Because if you don't log it, right, you don't get okay, any no's or anyone that gets flagged, right? We can log that, say in our backend. Oh wow, we're getting a lot of questions like this, but we have no data to support this. Well, the answer is very simple. Just add data now
Yeah.
that supports it. And it should hopefully should pull everything, given that you structure everything neatly, right? But if you don't have these checks, there's no way for you to know that you're missing those data points in your knowledge base or in your documentation. And if it's not in your documentation, not even a human can go help you answer that if you gave me only these docs, let alone an AI model. See what I'm trying to say? So it's like helping you fill in the gaps because no model, no AI system is ever going to be perfect. It's just like anticipating where it can break and having like guardrails or at least guardrails to see where it would break and to have all the data stored to understand so you can understand why it broke in that moment. If that makes if that makes sense. But
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess thinking through those scenarios as well beforehand is going to be useful. Maybe you can't plan for
yeah,
everything, and
can't
maybe
plan for everything, but you should. And that's why I'd say it's important to like kind of like really actually dive into like how like the business context works
yeah,
because you can't really plan for everything unless you know like how it will actually be used in a real life setting, if that makes sense. So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned a few things there about RAG and prompting. Is there a balance between the both? Like I've heard people say, well, why do you just put everything in the prompts and the user prompts and the system prompts and not bother with the RAG? You know, with the context windows right now, are, you know, getting bigger.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Gemini. Um, is there a trade-off there? Like, is there a balance to be had? Like,
Yeah, I've been funny enough, that's something I've been exploring myself as these models have gotten better. Like I think it depends on how much documentation you have and how well it's formatted as the big thing.
yeah,
Because truthfully, I actually think you can not put in everything. Let's say you have like you're a company with like 8 SOPs and like an FAQ, right? Like honestly, maybe you don't even need to pull in a chunk. But let's say a user asks about onboarding. I actually made a video on this. Let's say a user asks about onboarding. Maybe you don't need to pull in a chunk of data, but you could just throw in the whole onboarding document as just material, which is and honestly it does very well with that. Actually, like incredibly well with that.
yeah.
So what you can change then is again, it all applies in the context of like how much data you're working with. Because like let's say I have like because I built like an agent to like kind of like sift through like 50,000 contracts. You can't really obviously dump all that in, even with the largest. That's just not going to work, right? Uh, but so similar, like let's say with let's go back to the simple example of like an internal chatbot for like for a business, right? You don't need a you probably not probably you don't need to chunk everything, but you could just route it to what type of question this belongs to and correspond to the doc. So another idea is kind of like at this point in time, to my eyes, like you don't need to chunk everything necessarily, but I think you do need to provide it still some form of like don't dump every fucking thing into it either, if that makes sense. Like you can just because the context windows are large, you have some more leeway, yes, but
Hmm.
you shouldn't dump like the entire fucking farm
Yeah.
inside. So like yeah, like with internal chatbot, you can maybe instead of doing like RAG where you're taking a chunk of data of like a snippet or like maybe like a 1,000 token chunk or 3,000 token chunks, you just feed it the whole onboarding doc. So you can just route like here's this question, route it to classify which document is which document is the best fit to help answer this question. And there's like onboarding with a definition of what an onboarding doc is. Sale, I don't know. You get the idea, like a list of documentations with like actual definitions of what each mean to help the LLM classify it. And again, see, and then when it gets kind of confusing, if you have way too much though, the LLM couldn't fuck up and not know which doc to pick. If you have like maybe let's say you have 20 different docs, 30 different docs, then that classification gets a little bit harder. But there's like ways around that too, I would say. But yeah, yeah. So nonetheless, to answer your question, it does give you a lot more leeway, but I still provide at least my decent like 6 out of 10 relevancy of context, and I don't dump like the whole farm in for sure. Because I've seen people like try to answer like a customer. One of my good friends, I love him to death. I'm not gonna say who, but I love him to death. He like tried to make, he doesn't know much about AI, so he's just like playing around with n8n. He's like showing me his flow. He's like trying to build like a kind of like a customer chatbot to help answer like client questions. He was throwing in like the Fathom transcript, Slack chatbot history, all their FAQs, all their docs. I'm like, bro, you're just throwing way too much shit in,
Yeah,
like way too much shit in, like because dude, those Fathom transcripts for like a meeting call,
an
that
hour
shit's like
long.
that's
Yeah,
like a 30-minute, hour-long call. That's long as fuck. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like that's like way too much. So you still want to condense it and give it some mildly relevant context. Like, hey, here's the last meeting's call and that's it. Or hope given that it's relevant to this question, but which probably it isn't. But like the best example is like if they ask an onboarding question, you give it just the full onboarding SOP. It's
yeah,
probably like the easy.
yeah, for sure. I mean, other ways of doing that is you could have one step that pulls in the transcript, like if you're pulling it in from an API or from a webhook, and you could have the AI summarize that and
Mhm.
then pass that into the next section if you want to put that into the prompt instead of having the whole fucking
Yeah,
transcript.
yeah, it was like a full transcript, like is their entire FAQs and internal docs. I'm like, dude, that's like a bajillion text go pushing through.
Exactly.
Like that's crazy. But yeah, yeah.
But for other situations like chatbots and things like we have an AI that reaches out to leads and books them in for calls, right? It decreases
Mhm.
the speed to lead. It's we don't have a knowledge base plugged in, but everything is in the prompt. FAQs, the instructions, the booking process.
Mhm.
If we get a negative response, things like this. So, and that works really, really well. Um,
Yeah.
but for things where there's a lot of data, a bunch of documents, obviously you're not gonna stuff that into.
Yeah, 100%. Mhm.
Yeah. But on the flip side, we have an abandoned cart AI. So that works really well plugged into a knowledge base. We can basically scrape their website and have all their products, all their copy, everything stashed into the knowledge base. So
Mhm.
if they start asking questions about the product in their cart, then bang, we've got access to
You can
all
actually provide the relevant like product that comes with it type of thing. Yeah, 100%.
the. So those are some pretty good use cases, I think. And yeah, is there a method or a preferred way to ingest data into like a vector database, like a vector store?
I have my own preferred way. So I like, and again, it depends what data we're working with, right? That's like because I think with the vector store, it's not most of the time it's just pure text data. And a vector store works best when it's like messy, very messy text data, right? In terms of like token stuff, I don't really honestly I'm kind of just basic. I used to do like 1,000 tokens. I don't really put too much thought into that. But what I like to do is always have, and this is just basics principles, and this depends because so this kind of at least to me, like what I was told when I was first taught all this was always having like say again, let's just go back to the simple example of like onboarding doc or like SOPs and like internal documentation, like having the actual headers to give that chunk true context. Because let's say like
Mm,
I think like a technology clause upgrade, a tech upgrade clause is just gigantic, right? Which at least in my case, like I worked a lot with contracts just to give give everyone context.
yeah.
Like I work a shit ton with like contracts with most of my AI systems. A lot of these clauses are fucking huge. Okay. So let's say you split everything up by like 1,000 tokens. Let's just say split everything up by like 500 words or 1,000 words, right? And some of these clauses are fucking huge, like more than 1,000 words. You're not gonna get the full entire clause, right, in a chunk of like a snippet that you can provide in the prompt. But what I always like to do is what section does this snippet belong to? The tech upgrade clause. And what type of contract does this belong to? Because at least for some of the people I work with, they have like multiple contracts for per customer. So there's like just easy example like NDA clause, service agreement clause, or service agreement contract, NDA contract, things like that. So like what's the actual contract this belongs to one? What's the section of said contract and then the actual like snippet of text that we're pulling in type of thing. So main goal is just to make it where like if the fuck, my camera just zoomed out for a second, but make it where like it's really easy to like understand if like even if I was an idiot, I like to like base all my systems where it'd be like just fucking idiot like dipshit proof, where
Mhm.
like even if the context you gave me and I was a dipshit, I would still have a decent understanding of what this means because I gave it the heading of the contract, the section heading, and then the snippet of text, where I can still have some general idea again of what this means, type of thing.
Got it.
But yeah.
So instead of just ramming in like a plain text doc with no like headers or formatting, you can.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people go about like providing context the wrong way, where they think, and it's an AI is very smart, where they think like an AI is like the altruistic gut, which is fucking crazy. This all obviously because I wouldn't be doing this shit. Like how fucking smart this machines are, but it's like if you still have like a good machine, you want to still put it in a good environment to succeed, type of thing. Like if you had like say like the best quarterback or the best basketball player, you don't want to give him shitty players to work with. You still want to put him in a good environment with a good coach to fucking win at the end of the day. So it's like kind of like the simplest analogy I like to give for all that. But yeah.
Yeah. It's like the difference between like writing a solid prompt and just like being lazy with it. Like if you could
Mhm.
if you can do a bit more and that will be helpful to get better output.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was like talking to someone in the DMs recently because they were just asking for help with like doing like with their copywriting, like generating copy with like Chat GPT and shit. And they're like, hey, like I'm just like ingesting a bunch of like copywriting material from like other like past like OG copywriters like Dan Kennedy, I don't know, like people like Agora, like good
Yeah,
sales letters, that's it.
classic.
Right? And it's like, okay, like but like I want to like acquire like a good database to like feed it. Like what would be the best one? Like, I'll be honest, dude. Like you can use ChatGPT to help you find like good sales letters and shit. But like I would fucking manually, not man, like I would manually curate that data set, like that knowledge base of sales letters yourself, because it really does. And maybe it's just gonna come from like the machine learning world of like tuning out, like fine tuning models of like where like understand like a couple of fucked up examples that you're training the data on really does skew the results of the outcome of the model. So like, let's say you give it like four good sales letters from like Agora, and like there's like one like kind of mid one. That
Mm.
will actually have an effect on the actual outcome of the copy you have it right. Like let's say you give a ghostwriter or you make a ghostwriter like AI, right? And how it works is you have a good prompt, and but it's supposed to write tweets based off like a brain dump you have on like this idea, but it's supposed to base the structure, the vocabulary off of five example tweets from your past, right? So what if four of them are good value tweets? Because let's say we're writing valuable tweets like about AI content, but one of them you accidentally throw in a shit post. That actually has an effect on that will maybe not have effect like every time, but maybe two times out of like 10 or 20, that shit post will have an effect on how that tweet will actually be written from this AI ghostwriter. So that's what I'm saying, like, because say you're building an AI ghostwriter and you want to provide like a knowledge base of good tweets, you should maybe I remember someone asked me like I could just pull in all my tweets. I'm like, okay, but do all your tweets like are perfectly like aligned with how you want this ghostwriter to write? Right? Because what if like you have just a shit post, which is fine. I shit post. I actually don't shit post that much anymore. But like people shit post all the time, but you don't want that in your knowledge base to fuck it up when you actually generate the actual tweet. Because literally one of those, if it's just one of those out of the five, it really does make a huge difference. Obviously, like the results will be drastically different if you just removed that one and just kept the four good ones type of thing.
Yeah, so curate your own knowledge, basically. It's,
Yeah, and I'm pretty like, and again, maybe just because I'm like, I was like, I trained, I guess was trained up before all this AI GPT stuff, like as like a data scientist. So
yeah,
we took data very seriously. Like this just was my job because I was just like from school and everything too. But like, yeah, like I always just like trained to like take the time if needed to fucking get dirty and even manually clean the data yourself if that's what it takes. But yeah, so but that makes it's the honestly the highest moving needle in creating a very personalized, high context based AI system is having good context to give it. And if that's what it takes, then yeah, sometimes that's what it takes.
definitely. Yeah, especially if with the use case that you mentioned, if you're trying to write copy. I mean, I have a bunch of context files in my Claude projects for
Mhm.
specific things, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's writing a tweet or a post or an email or whatever, I've pulled a bunch of stuff that I'm like, I like this. This is kind of the style that I want to go down, and
Mhm.
maybe I've found a bunch of tweets that have got. I mean, I've got a file that I think there's like 20 or 30 different tweets that have all got over 100K views. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
if these have done well, I want to give them, I want to give the AI these examples to try and
Exactly.
use as, yeah, as I guess knowledge to pull from.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like with Facebook ads. You want it to learn from like their best customers that are buying
Totally.
rather than the ones that aren't buying and shit. So when you, it's like polluting your like your algorithm almost when you throw in like shitty content inside there. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually realized last night, ChatGPT, there is a Teams function, right? There's a different plan where you can add a team. In that,
Mhm.
you can actually create your own knowledge base inside of inside of ChatGPT now, which
Oh, that's sick. I didn't even know
you
that.
don't even need to you don't even need to use RAG anymore. You can literally just uh, upload files or connect to Google Drive or whatever.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
actually had no clue.
yeah, it's brand new. Like I just found out about this last night. I'm gonna be checking that out. Because I think often people can overcomplicate things as well, especially when there's all these
Yeah.
different tools out there. It's like actually no, there's some pretty straightforward ways of doing these things.
Yeah. Like there's like so many, it's so easy to like fall in the trap of like this tool does this, this, and that. That's kind of what I was saying. Like before we started recording, I was like, dude, honestly, I'm like a fucking boomer when it comes to all these tools. I don't even know what Bolt. I've never opened an n8n account. I don't know Bolt. I just found out what Bolt was like 2 days ago. Like it's really just being able to like think like an engineer is like the highest needle moving thing. And like I could probably pick up n8n decently well, I'm sure, pretty quickly, just because of like just how one thinks and things like that. And like because these tools will all keep evolving and shit like that. But like no matter what, you still have to like fucking set up guardrails, set up air handling, set up know how to think and how it works and how it affects the business, shit like that is like the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the wildest example I've seen of founders and entrepreneurs not really knowing what they're doing. So, I'll give you an example. I got a message on X, and they basically gave me this long proposal of like what they need, and you can tell they've just put in like what they need into ChatGPT, and it spat out this massive list. And I'm like, you don't need that. You don't need that. This is pointless. So there's a lot of that going around where founders will be like, oh, I want to create this thing. They ask ChatGPT to create the requirements, and it's it's way off like
Yeah,
what you would want to do, or at least you know some things
what
are
makes sense. Like
necessary,
even a
or
business
kind
point
of
type of thing too.
outdated.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. One thing that I did want to touch on was prompt engineering. Is there is there stuff that you can share on that of like how you're thinking about?
Honestly, bro, I am pretty mid at prompt engineering.
Yeah,
Like I do, okay, I do like to me I'm mid. I'm not mid, but I'm gonna say I'm like fantastic. Like a lot of my time is spent honestly. Like truthfully, it's like just like to like everyone listening to like I'm like someone that's like I guess people quote unquote like pretty decent at AI stuff. And I don't spend that much time on the prompt. Don't get me wrong, I still spend time on the prompt and like, but I guess and maybe I don't spend that much time because I practice a lot. I did a lot of it. Maybe I'm just underselling myself type of thing. But
yeah,
most of the time really is spent on my side, like on the infrastructure, honestly, nowadays. Like in terms of prompting, trying to think of normal things I always do. I think with prompting. Here's actually, because I was actually talking to someone about this. Again, maybe there's just stuff that's like second nature to me that I just think like everyone does, but it's like not. It's like kind of going back again to like understanding that an AI can't read your mind. Like I can like almost tell if someone's like good at running SOPs for their actual employees based on the prompts, based off of how they write their prompts. Because if you actually you should write your prompts, in my opinion, as if the AI was an actual dipshit. Even though it's smart and it can do a lot of dope stuff, it can't read your mind on understanding how the way you want certain things done. Because kind of like what people say, like I'm trying to think of a good example because I was writing a prompt actually last night for something I wanted to build for a client. I'm trying to think. Like, let's say you pretty meticulous on like on how you want something categorized, or like here's a good example actually. A lot of people put like a scale of 1 through 10. I see this all the time. Like rate this sales call on a scale of 1 through 10 based off its transcript.
Mm.
right? You have to again think the AI is a fucking dipshit at the end of the day. Because think of it like this, and this is a basic example, rate the sales call on a scale of 1 through 10. But let's say you give that to a human, and this is the analogy I always like to tell when I talk to like clients and things like that with when writing a prompt. Think of it if you gave this prompt to a human. Here's a transcript, rate it on a scale of 1 through 10. If you gave that exact prompt to five different humans, they're all good at sales, let's say, they would probably give you a different number
Mm.
every fucking time. Because you just said, give me a rate this on a scale. Like, what is a 10?
Yeah, exactly.
What does a 7 mean? Like, you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But if you go rate this on a scale of 1 through 10, here's the transcript. Obviously, don't do it in this order. Like, rate this. I want your jobs to like rate this sales call on a scale of 1 through 10, where one's defined as this, two is defined as this, with real, like, using your brain, your internal brain, because again, an AI can't read for you what a two means in your head, what a three means in your head. Writing that down uh, and type it again, that requires work, obviously, that people don't want to do half the time. But actually writing that down, what each of those mean, now you're actually getting consistent results when it evaluates these calls. And again, it kind of goes back to what I'm saying. Like, I want to always reduce the amount of hallucinations. One thing that's not a quote unquote a hallucination is inconsistency with results with prompting, right? I want a consistent output where if I were to give that same call again, I would get the same score
Mm.
time at like at least 95% of the time at the least, right? And you only would get that if you define the actual levels.
Totally.
And so it applies to like not just with like rating or something on a scale of 1 to 10, but like let's say like you're having it write copy. And again, it depends. Sometimes you like to write, one person likes to write copy in a specific way. You like your hooks to be more, for this specific example, you want your hooks to be more indirect or versus direct. But you have to state that. You have to explain maybe if you have an exact structure that you like it to like your hooks to be, you just provide the actual fucking structure on and it will actually follow it. It's like again, make don't assume it can read your mind, don't assume it's smart. It's the best when you give it really precise directions and it can replicate that like better than anyone in the world. You have to give it the right instructions. So I guess that I don't have any like crazy strat like tactics and like putting certain things
Oh,
here
that's
and there and things like that. But it's like going back to the same thought process I've been saying from like the beginning of this call is like just assume it's a dipshit and assume you're like giving a human, a real employee, this exact task. Can this person replicate it the way you want? And it's almost like writing an SOP. A lot of times, how I view writing a prompt, actually. So yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's super useful, man. Like, I think you're underselling yourself a bit there with, but
Dude,
no,
I've been seeing EP drop too. My boy EP drop too much shit, and I'm like, damn, I would never have thought of that shit. But I don't take that much time to write these prompts a lot of times either. But
uh,
yeah,
I think you might take it for granted, like that, the experience and things that you do every day, like, might not be common for a lot of people. And yeah, prompt engineering is a whole thing, but I think giving a specific example of like what you want the output to be, like an example of what that
yeah,
might look like, is also super useful.
yeah. That's actually like that's like one of the highest. Again, maybe that is something I just think is like everyone does, but no one does it. Is actually providing examples because like I see people fucking complaining all the time that they write like ChatGPT or Claude writes like AI slop with like trying to write content.
Yeah.
No one's given examples for it to learn off the content. Like, because if you actually gave it, say, like 5 tweets or 5 blog posts, whatever the fuck you're doing, right? And tell it, write exactly like this person, copy their diction, the level of vocabulary, their language patterns, their structure of how they write. It will actually do a pretty damn good job at that. You just have to give it examples and tell it to copy these example structures type of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah.
You can also run the document or something through and ask it to pull out a context profile and all the things that you want. So then you have
Mm,
all of that stated. So
yeah,
so you've got the example, you've extracted the tone, the insights, the whatever you wanting to
yeah.
pull out for your use case. That's gold. I mean, that's how I use.
Yeah, I think like having an actual like context profile plus real life examples. Because again, it's kind of like going back, like with like just I never personally like just having only a context profile because it's kind of going back again. Like let's say like this person writes direct, like very direct. But kind of going back again, like what does direct mean? Like
Mhm.
that, like writing very direct can be so different from me to you to five different people.
Right.
And that's what providing the examples with the context where like, oh, this is what direct looks like to this person. You see what
Mm.
I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
As
yeah,
I kind of go, like, assuming the AI is a dipshit, like what does this person's not gonna know what direct means? Or what like this person doesn't like this person writes very casual, but like what the fuck's casual mean? Like does this person like curse a lot? He just writes very loose. Like it doesn't no one knows unless you give it examples,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, that's really important, man. But yeah, we're gonna wrap things up, Tyler. Thanks for sharing all of that. It's
Bro.
actually super useful. I know that you're not super in the weeds with some of these tools, but I think it's, speaking to an engineer and someone who's worked with a lot of data, is it's good to get that perspective of like, how do you think about things before you actually jump in and get lost in the source. So where can people find you? I know you've got a YouTube channel on X. What are those handles?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter. I'm primarily on there. So Tyler underscore ag. So Tyler underscore AGG. Then that's pretty much where you can find most of my shit, to be honest. So I'm just riffing random shit about AI and posting videos on there too. And yeah, that's probably the best spot where you guys can find me. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, I respond to all my DMs and fucking answer questions very thoroughly through there too. So feel free to hit me up with there on there too as well.
Awesome. Legend, Tyler. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, bro.
Catch you, bro.